This is Elizabeth Clare Brewington, and Philip is no stranger to the Brightside stage. He's appeared on two of our shows and maybe more, and uh, and he is a veteran. So thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you for your service.
You're
We
welcome.
have been awarded by the North Carolina Veterans Business Association. We won the Champion Award, and for the reason that we love to tell veteran stories. Uh,
Mm.
so welcome, 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 and tell me about yourself, and please share your story.
Sure. Well, Elizabeth, thank you for allowing me to be a guest on your great show, and hello to your audience. And my name is Philip Hogan, and my story is really about just living a life of dreams, right? And as you mentioned, Elizabeth, I entered the military in 75 to 79. It's the United States Navy, and I had an opportunity to travel the world. I discharged from the military in 1979 and was still had the traveling, bug in me. So I traveled, throughout the United States and eventually settled back into New York in the early 80s. And my parents had started a small stationery store, and as children, we were required to work in our parents' businesses. It wasn't, you didn't get paid for this. It was, if anything, when we talk about child labor laws were being broken, it's like, oh, forget about it. And, we didn't, but no one thought anything about that. It's like, okay, your parents want you to come do this and do that. You did it. And so, but that's where the entrepreneurial bug really got established, or the seed really got established. And so then my parents started a second business, and that's when I was very, very involved in that business. It's a newspaper delivery business that, produced 16,000 sheets a night, and it was delivered throughout the five boroughs of New York. And I was really involved with not so much building it, but scaling. And there I saw my father, there I learned the concepts of scaling businesses, marketing businesses, doing with the accounting, providing the customer service, training staff, hiring staff, monitoring staff, evaluating staff, and also more importantly, working with our customers. And one of the things that my father taught me, and it's in my book, Relentless Excellence, a story of family, business building, and value-driven leadership, that could be purchased on Amazon. And you can also learn more about the book on my website, which is www.philiphogan.com, PhilipHogan.com, is where I talk about many of the advices, the wisdom that my father poured into me as I worked side by side in his business. And one day we walked into a customer store, and I said, "Hello, my friend. How are you?" And I thought I was being polite and correct. Well, my father, we couldn't wait to get out the store, and he said, "Listen, man," he says, "I don't want you speaking to these people, are not your friends. These are your customers, and you have to understand the difference between a friend and a customer. And when you address them, you have to address them as your customer, because these are people that are paying for your service or paying for your product." And that just really, stayed with me. And it's those type of lessons that I learned along the way as to how to handle yourself in business, and to be able who and to distinguish yourself and distinguish those that you work with properly. So then, fast forward, my first business was a nonprofit for formerly incarcerated adult men who were nonviolent drug offenders coming home from correctional facilities in Brownsville, Brooklyn. I purchased a building out of in my own name, with my own money, and turned it into a successful nonprofit named Housing Matters of New York. And there we were able to do some marvelous work in the community that really looked down on men coming home from correctional facilities. And so one of the things that I shared with the community is these crimes, these guys are committing crimes in your backyard, and they don't have any places to live and stay. So if you don't, I didn't want to
Yeah,
threaten them, but
if we don't, yeah,
if you don't help, then they're going to come back and commit crimes in your front yard.
yeah.
So I am offering you an opportunity here to partner with me to help, and they did. And so for 5 years, the program was successful, and but I got burned out. I just did a lot of things, and just really trying to beat the drum to a community and a borough, which is Brooklyn, for services that they all knew was needed, but no one was really as aware of the issue as I was.
Yeah.
So we we closed down the program, and then I took a break, and we relocated to Atlanta, Georgia, and and while in Atlanta, I started Signing Services of America, which is my second business, and that was established in 2016. And here's really where the book talks about, it's a tie-in to all of the things that I've accomplished by working with my father in my first business. And we, in the 10 years that we've been in business, we've really achieved some wonderful milestones. And the biggest milestone is the book, Relentless Excellence. And it's a legacy. It's a blueprint of how I've been able to turn lemons into lemonade, how I've been able to make, how I've been able to turn some of the setbacks in my life and converted those into successes, and how I've been able to inspire others to want to work with me and be a part of my vision because of the early lessons that I learned from my father working side by side in their businesses.
Wow. So congratulations. That sounds like a
Thank
big
you.
undertaking. Nobody realizes that when you have your own business or enterprise or nonprofit, it is a lot of work and it's your own. So it's a lot that you put in. So tell me about this book. What is the title of the book? Where can people get the
Mm,
book? I would love to have
mm.
the book hosted on our bookstore as well, so we can talk about that later. But tell me a little bit about this book.
Sure. So the title of the book is named Relentless Excellence, a story of family, business building, and value-driven leadership. And it can be purchased on Amazon. I had mentioned earlier my website is philliphogan.com. That's philliphogan.com. There you can read more about myself and some of the things that I've accomplished. And you can read excerpt of the book and of course order it through the website as well. And so it was time. It was time to tell my story. And I didn't realize it until I had been approached by a podcast recruiter for me to come on to the show to talk about Signing Services of America. And so when we finished that conversation, he quickly shifted over into, have I ever thought about writing a book? And they just happen to be publishers. And I says, well, no. He says, well, you should think about it. And I did. And the more I thought about it, it really made sense. And a lot of strong feelings began to spring up deep within me about what this book should be about and why I should write the book. And so, as a third generation entrepreneur, I have a lot to say in regard to, the life of an entrepreneur. I saw my parental grandparents come from a small island in the Eastern Caribbean named Montserrat, and they settled into Harlem in the early 1900s. And my grandparents became the beacon for other family members to come follow their trail from Montserrat into into Harlem and settle, and then ultimately began to continue with the migration trail up into the Bronx. And then on my mother's side of the family, my grandmother was a bishop of her church over on 126th Street and Park Avenue in Harlem. And you're talking about in the early 1900s, is a female being the leader of a church was almost unheard of.
Yeah.
And she she was the bishop, and she ran her church like a business. And then of course my father and my mother obviously were successful entrepreneurs, and I grew up in a household where my father, when he retired from New York City Police Department, he became a entrepreneur, and my mom was the accountant. So so I had the I had the good fortune of being around very disciplined people,
Oh,
being around
yeah.
people who were driven for excellence,
Yeah.
right? And and so the book is about that. It's about how I learned like I mentioned earlier, how my entrepreneurial seeds were born and matured, and harvested, and as a result, how I've finally walked my lane. It also talks about, I'm 40 years of I have 40 years of sobriety. It also My book also mentions that I am a prostate cancer survivor, and my book also mentions the number of other mistakes that I've made as being an entrepreneur, and how I have used each one of those moments in my life as a turning point, as an inspiration to do better, to not repeat, to overcome, and keep pushing forward. And so we named the book Relentless Excellence, because when I look back in the things that I've accomplished and the people that help inspire me to become the person I am, we've all lived a life of excellence. It was like, you know, my father set the bar. He said, "Philip, okay, this is the next goal," and you touch the bar, metaphorically speaking. And then when I touched the bar, he says, "Okay, we'll raise another 12 inches, and here's another goal." And the message that I'm sending to people is that never be satisfied with the shortcomings that life has to offer you, right? Be willing to look at those shortcomings and say, what else is in me that I can use to push to the next level. And that's what I've always done in everything that I've done. And so the book, it was just a natural title to name it Relentless Excellence.
Wow. 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 I always say this on the show that, when you get knocked down and you pick yourself up and then you give it back to the world, it is just such an
Mm,
incredible journey. So, where now? I mean,
mm,
now this is your legacy now, the next phase in your life. So, where now? What is the
mm.
footprint that you want to leave behind or forward?
Well, yeah, well, the footprint is really is that is as I mentioned before, when life dishes out you a bunch of lemon, you got to learn to make some lemonade, right?
Yeah, do.
And you know, and so as an entrepreneur, I wanted to write a book to upcoming aspiring entrepreneurs, or entrepreneurs that may have already established their business, but they don't know how to scale, or they don't feel they don't have the desire to scale, or they're afraid to scale, or they are faced some other type of challenges that's preventing them from scaling. And I say this, that maybe for 5 years ago, one of our accounts was sending us about 45 to $50,000 worth of business monthly, right? I mean, it was a wonderful relationship, and all of a sudden they cut off the account. And when I looked at, wow, I was shocked. And I thought I failed. And I said, oh my gosh, what am I gonna do? I got staff, I got this, I got that. And so, but I stopped and I looked inside myself. I said, Philip, let's go through the process of figuring out what happened, why it happened, how it happened, when did it happen, and what caused it to happen. And I said, that's your starting point to find out how to recover from this. And I did. And I realized what we did, and I implemented a system that we still have today that will prevent us from ever having this kind of issue. So I'm sharing that with entrepreneurs, that just because I'm a seven-figure business owner doesn't mean that I haven't made mistakes. It doesn't mean that I haven't learned from those mistakes. It doesn't mean that those mistakes didn't hurt me. Sure, it hurt me. My pride was hurt. My pocket was hurt, right? Among other things, I was devastated, but I couldn't stay in that place because people were depending upon me to deliver what they had expected from us up until that point. And we recovered, and we moved on, and here we are, as I mentioned earlier, 10 years in that we're still knocking the doors down, and we have clients that still send us business and they love us. And so the message that I'm sending to your audience is, again, is to always look within, not only for your answers, but also for the questions. What do I need to do? And when you ask that question, be silent and listen for the answer, because the answer is deep within you. And when you hear the answer, then you begin to ask yourself, put it all together, say, I have the question, I have the answer. I'm working on the solution to getting out of the situation that I'm in, whatever that situation is.
Fantastic. Wow. So there you have it. You've been discovered on Discover Brightside, and we are looking forward to having more of you. And thank you so much for your service. And we look forward to learning more about the book as well. So thank you so much. You're
Thank you for
watching
having me.
Discover Bright Side. And if you served in the Navy or anywhere, write Philip a comment. Go connect with him on social media and get to know him, get his book, support him. That's what we do at Brightside. Write a review. So there's tons of ways that you can support this channel. And write us a comment. Tell us what you think about the interview. Did you learn something new? We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Thank you for watching Discover Brightside.